40 years ago, 5-year-old Lê Mỹ Hương, half Australian and half Vietnamese, was among 3,000 children taken away from Vietnam in Operation Baby Lift.
I never knew that I was leaving permanently. All I wanted was to be back here with my mother.
Tôi cho con tôi đi mà tụi đứt ruột, tôi chết lên chết xuống. Tôi cứ nói hoài cái câu đó. Mẹ cho con mẹ rất hối hận.
I think it's time I need to go back to Vietnam. I don't know why, but I just need to go.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Talk Vietnam. After the American War, thousands of children and babies were taken out of the country and relocated to different regions of the world, hundreds of them in Australia. Now, these Australian adoptive children did not live a complete life filled with roses. Some of them were haunted by the question, why did their mothers leave them? 40 years on, some of them have returned back to Vietnam to search for their birth mothers. Some have been successful, and some are still continuing their search. But successful or not, all of them share an invisible string, a thread that connects them to this birth homeland. And today in Talk Vietnam, we'll actually get a chance to talk to one of them and a couple others who will share with us their stories of search as well as potential closure. Hello, Mỹ Hương. Thank you so much for joining us on our show today.
Thank you for having me here today.
So first, tell us a little bit about some of your memories back in the day when you were 4, if I'm not wrong, 4 years old when you left the country. What was it? What was your life back then?
I was living with my mother and an aunt. I was living in Vung Tau, and so I had many family surrounding me, many relatives, as well as a half-brother that was living with me who's 2 years younger than myself. Mm-hmm. So my life was very happy. I have many memories, and I do remember the neighbourhood. My first school is very near the house that I lived in, and it's still there now.
Oh, wow. It's still there after so many years.
Yes.
How was your life like before you evacuated the country? And describe your mother, describe your parents.
I think my aunt was probably my primary carer because my mother was working. But of course, I was a very happy child with my mother, and I knew her very well. So that was up until pretty much a few days before I left. My mother sat down and spoke to my brother and I, and to be honest, at that age, obviously I didn't know the full impact of what she was telling me. But I just learnt recently that at that time, I had promised my mother that I would return when I was 18 to find her. And for my mother, she held on to those words all her life. Yeah. So obviously I had some understanding that I was going to be able to have said that. Mm-hmm. But I don't believe in my heart that I could have known that I wouldn't see her again.
And did you have any inclination or any kind of postulation as to why your mom gave you away?
I was too young then. I mean, at 5, I couldn't comprehend it was the end of the war and what was happening. I just know that my mother's decision was very, very sudden. Yes. So you can imagine waking up one day and then your mother telling you that you're going. Mm-hmm. And that's how it was.
Tell me about the memories that you still remember the most. That day when you got into the car and then you saw your mother, what did you see?
So the very last day I left, I was in a white car and my mother was standing outside and she was just crying hysterically. And I looked out the back window and that's all I saw. It was her crying and crying. And the car drove away. And that's the very last memory I had of her, my whole childhood and teenage years until I came back to see her.
The image of her mother at home followed Mỹ Hương and became a restless conviction. It quietly weighed in her heart and became more painful every time she saw images of her mother.
When we arrived in Australia, they told us that our mother had died, just so that we would forget Vietnam. It was their way for us to think that we would just forget everything. But of course, a 5-year-old, you have those memories and you can't just forget. It's every day. I used to cry myself to sleep every night until maybe I was 8 or 9 years old. Yeah, all I wanted was to be back here with my mother and my family that I knew.
Her longing for the embrace and warmth of a mother brought My Hương back to her hometown after 30 years of being away. During her journey to find her mother, My Hương did not know that in Vietnam, her mother also longed for her relentlessly. With a desire to find the children, she forced herself to give away in April 1975.
Tôi đi đưa nó đi lên tầng thứ nhất, tôi có nói Mỹ Hương à, mẹ không muốn đưa con đi đâu, mà vì hoàn cảnh mẹ, nếu mà mẹ chết á, thì con ở lại với ai, con sống với ai. Còn nếu mà con chết á, thì mẹ cũng không nên sống để làm gì nữa. Mẹ rất hối hận lắm. Thành nữ giờ mẹ bắt buộc mẹ cho con đi, con đừng có buồn mẹ. Thì nó không có khóc, quan tâm nó khóc. Nó nói con biết rồi mẹ đừng có buồn, mẹ về Vũng Tàu đi. Thì con 18 tuổi con về con tìm mẹ. Lúc đó tôi ở lại tôi muốn chết luôn, nhà cửa cũng không còn. Mình lấy chân không còn một cái gì, chân tôi ra mình không chỉ mấy bộ đồ thôi. Tôi cho con tôi đi mà tôi đứt ruột, tôi chết lên chết xuống mỗi lần khi mà xế chiều rồi tôi ra ngoài bãi, tôi dòm bên cạnh bên kia là tôi thấy mù mịt, tôi nói rồi không bao giờ gặp con lại đâu. Tôi cứ nói hoài cái câu đó, mẹ cho con mẹ rất hối hận. Bởi bây giờ sau này nó về nó trách tôi, nó trách tôi sao bao nhiêu con Mỹ còn ở lại Việt Nam mà mẹ cho con đi, mẹ đứt đồ mẹ cho con đi, mẹ không còn thương con mẹ mới cho đi.
Now, how did you manage to turn what was in your heart into an action that you actively sought for your birth mother?
When I was 15, my adopted mother died. And at that point, I had always wanted to return to Vietnam.
Yeah.
But the practicalities of doing that, of course, I didn't know how to do that. So after my adopted mother died, I was going through a filing cabinet
Yes.
in my father's office, and I found an address. And it was really odd because often in my childhood I had had a dream and this address would appear in my childhood. Wow. And it was the last house I lived in Canton. So I decided to write to that address.
Not knowing where
Not
it would
knowing
lead
anything, you know, not knowing if I'd get a response, what would happen. And I received a fax, and it was only one line fax, and it said, "Mother still alive, happy to hear from you." And that was it. Wow. And I thought, well, that means she's alive. I mean, I've known all along she's alive, and now this is proof that she is alive.
Yeah.
And then after that, though, I had like probably a 10-year emotional roller coaster, trying to communicate back and forth to Vietnam via letters. But my mother was using a translator to try to write for her.
Yeah.
But my mother is illiterate. She can't read or write herself. And so she didn't know what was said in the letters.
The words, yeah.
And some of the information was incorrect. And so it came to a point where I was questioning, who am I writing to? And who's replying back to my letters?
Was there any point in time when you thought that you would want to give up this search?
At that point, yes, because it was too difficult for me. And in 1999, I moved to Africa to work with HIV/AIDS orphans.
Yes.
And at that time, I thought to myself, I know I'm going to be possibly in dangerous situations in Africa, and maybe I'll die there. This is what I was thinking. You know, I didn't know.
Yes.
And I thought, okay, before I go to Africa, I need to write one more time to Vietnam, and if this is my mother, I need to tell her I'm going to Africa in case I die there. And then I got a letter back saying my mother died. And once again, I thought, maybe now she really has died because so many years have gone past. And I still didn't know who the letter was from. And at that point, I thought, okay, I'm going to Africa, that's it. I've done all I can about Vietnam. And so after 3 years in Africa, I went back to Australia.
Yeah.
And then I was working in the drug and alcohol field. And my closest friend, I was talking to her one day and I said to her, I know now is the time for me to return to Vietnam. And she said to me, that's amazing, I've been thinking about that and I'm going to go with you. So my best friend came with me on my first visit.
And your first visit was in 2004.
March 2004.
How did you feel when you saw your mother's expression when she met you for the first time? Did it bring you back to the past? Or how did you feel? Were you ecstatic? Were you relieved? Did you find closure?
It was very surreal to me. It happened very fast. I was sitting on that bench for the house that house actually is my best friend's house at the time.
Your childhood best friend?
Yeah, my childhood best friend and her mother. And the minute they saw me, they recognized me. They said, Mi Hương, and like all excitement broke out. And they said to me, I couldn't understand 2 words, I couldn't understand anything. And all I hear is Tien talking to them very fast and very excited. So I knew something exciting was happening.
Yes.
And then I'm waiting for Tien to tell me what. And she turned around to me and she just said, your mother's coming. Well, to me, this just happened so fast. And within 10 minutes, she was actually there. And the first embrace with her, the minute I saw her, I knew it was her. But she was crying, like really crying again. And the only memory in my mind was the last one when I left her. Because then she was crying and now she's still crying.
Yes.
Now that I'm in her arms. And we sat down and then she asked me about my brother. Of course, she wanted to know about my brother.
Yes.
But both of us, we just knew instantly who each other were.
And there's something that your mother gave you. She gave you something that belonged to you when you were young. What did she give you?
So she met me at my friend's house, and after that she took me to her own room.
Yes.
Just a small room she was renting. And the first thing she gave me was some photos. She showed me a photo of my birth father, and she showed me my own baby photos. And she also gave me my baby clothes, an outfit of my baby clothes that she'd kept all those years.
So were you surprised to know that your mother had missed you throughout all these years?
Absolutely. You know, she had gone to great effort to try to find me. And she was very, very poor. You know, she basically did any job she could, cooking, cleaning, mostly cooking jobs. And when she had enough money, every few years she would travel back to Ho Chi Minh City to go to the Red Cross, the Australian Embassy, to find somebody to help her, to see if they could help her find us. But everybody just sent her away. But she continued to do that persistently. So she never ever gave up.
Never gave up.
And I was saying before, the reason why she never gave up were those words that I told her when I was 5 before I left, that when I'm 18 I will return to find her.
Right.
Although I wasn't 18, I was then 33.
33. You kept your promise after all those years.
Không, bà này chết rồi.
Isn't that funny what I mean?
Me
carrying John.
Tháng đó. Nhìn giống con gái. Không bằng tháng đó. Nó yếu lên một.
Tell. There's me. Funny photo.
Do you feel that the encounter with your mother was a step towards closure for you?
Absolutely, of course. My grandfather was still alive when I came back.
Oh, wow.
So he was 86 when I returned. And I was really, really blessed to have spent 5 years with him in Vietnam. And I lived with my grandparents until I was 1. And the first thing he said when we were reunited, he said to me, he can die now.
Oh.
And he was 86, and I said, don't die now, I've just come back, you know. But he was at peace that he could actually die, and he died at 91. And before he died, he phoned me to tell me he was dying and I need to come to see him. Oh, wow. So that was very special.
So how did you, out of all the memories that you've had with your mother when you were young and back when you saw her again, what is the thing that remains most clear etched in your memory?
In the beginning, you know, she lived with me the first 4 years I was back, and it was getting to know somebody again. And when it's different culture and different language, in the beginning was very, very difficult. As a child, the most difficult thing for me was, how could a mother give up 2 children?
Yes.
I'd always question that, and that was one of the first questions I asked her when I came back.
And what did she say?
And I understand, of course I understand the situation at the time, but from head knowledge to heart knowledge is 2 different things.
Yes.
And the first time I actually understood it from my heart was the first time at the orphanage where I work, when I received a baby from a birth mother. It's such a difficult thing to do, and yet this woman is so brave to do this.
Yes.
And she's doing this in the hope that the little baby will have a better future. And that's the only reason she's doing it. And I remember this birth mother kissing the baby and speaking Vietnamese, of course, over the baby. And just holding the baby and kissing the baby. And handed the baby over. And then she left. And I kept thinking how hard that would be for her to do that. And then, of course, it made me think of my mother doing the same thing with my brother and I.
Now in 2012, Channel 7, Australia's Channel 7, did a documentary, a report on you, in which you also helped another friend to find his mother in Vietnam.
Jamie.
Jamie. Tell us a little bit about that.
Jamie was connected to me through Channel 7, so I didn't know Jamie prior. And even prior to helping Jamie, during my time in Vietnam, I had assisted a number of adoptees with their searches. 2 of them are with us today. My heart and passion, of course, because I'm adopted and I know the difficulty in finding birth mothers, of course I want to help fellow adoptees.
What were some of the difficulties in tracing somebody's birthplace or somebody's, birth parents?
The major difficulty is the paperwork that they have. We know in 1975, 3,000 children left Vietnam.
Yes.
And a lot of the paperwork, we don't know if they're falsified, done by lawyers, names given to children just so that they can leave the country. So to know whether that birth certificate is original and the facts, the contents of the birth certificate do in fact belong to that child is very, very difficult to find out. And all adoptees returning to search have that problem.
Yeah.
So now that is why in America we now have a DNA database.
Yes.
It is good to some degree, but it is adoptees submitting their DNA into this database, but no birth mothers in Vietnam to match it to.
Right.
So really all they're doing is finding out if other adoptees could be siblings or cousins. I know that if something like that doesn't exist in Vietnam, then the adoptees have very little chance of finding birth families.
In April this year, some of the adoptees have returned to Vietnam to remember the 40th anniversary of the evacuation. Some of them have turned to DNA testing to help them find their birth parents.
Having found the mother, My Hương is now active in guiding other adoptees on their search. Until now, dozens of fellow adoptees have contacted her to track down their roots. One of them is Kim Sang-bot, who was also born in Can Tho province to a Vietnamese woman and an African-American soldier. Back in 1973, he was given up to an orphanage at 2 months old. Kim then grew up happily in an adopted Australian family, but he has always wondered about his birth mother.
It was war, so it was very hard on everyone. I just think that she would have been that desperate to have to give me up, yeah. So it would be nice to find her, to give her some completion as well, just to know that I'm okay.
Thanks to her investigation, My Hương found a woman that has some matching information with Kim. In the early 1970s, Mrs. Ho Thi Choi had an affair with an African-American soldier and became pregnant. Fearing scrutiny and discrimination, she gave her son to an orphanage in Can Tho province, the same one Kim was adopted 40 years ago.
Buồn bởi vì tại hoàn cảnh mới cho, chứ không phải không hoàn cảnh đâu có cho được. Mình cho nó chứ mình để gì ở đây rồi trùng sớm á. Người ta nói ta dị nghị á, mình đi làm á, ta dị nghị. Bởi vì mình sợ cái chỗ đó đó, là đi cho.
Today, with My Hương arrangement, these two strangers meet. They hope to find out if they share the same blood or not.
Hello, how are you? What's your name?
In District 9, working in Ho Chi Minh. Camera stuck in your face though.
Can you remember any details at all?
Questions are asked about the father and the adoption, but the information is hazy, as over 40 years have passed and no paperwork remains.
There's many things to do in a search, and you have to go with every open possibility, and anything that comes up, you need to try that. So it's like ticking off many boxes, and this is ticking off one box. So we do the DNA testing, wait for the month, and then can only go from there.
Yeah, it's very hard to like this, but
The American War ended 40 years ago, but many mixed-race children continue to search for their birth parents, often working in half-forgotten memories. Against the odds, children and parents sometimes find each other. But for now, Mrs. Choi and Kim can only wait for the DNA results. Then they will know if the search is finally over.
In our studio today, we have invited some of Mi Hyung's friends who were also baby lift adoptees to share their own stories as well. So thank you very much for being here today. It's a great, great pleasure. Let's start with Sue maybe. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your story?
I left Vietnam at the age of 4 weeks old, so I was very, very young. Mm-hmm. So I have no memories of the time that I was here. And I arrived in Australia in May the 5th in 1974. I came from Sancta Maria Orphanage, which was in District 1.
We know that something happened when you gave birth to your first child at 27.
Yeah, 27, my daughter was born. And I guess living a very privileged life, and life was very easy. Mm-hmm. I didn't think much about how I would go about searching for my birth mother. But I guess as a rite of passage, mm-hmm. as you become an adult, you do start to question and wonder, and I think you become empowered too. Mm-hmm. You have the resilience and maybe the maturity and the finances to start thinking about how you might connect and with your birth culture and looking. So when my daughter was born, it took all of about 30 seconds, and I looked into her big brown eyes and I went, oh, they're Vietnamese. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, I'd better start my search and my journey so that when she grows up, that mm-hmm. she understands what her Vietnamese heritage is just as much as she'd understand her father's.
Mm-hmm. And how did you begin your search?
Most important thing I did before I came back was I had to put an application into the Australian government to access my documents mm-hmm. that were about my adoption and the legal process in Australia. And in that search, I actually found there were more documents that I had known about as I was growing up. And one of those things was a translation of a Vietnamese birth certificate. Mm-hmm. And of course that was quite fascinating because there was a mention of a mother on that document. It was the beginning of a journey, and from that point, meeting people like Mi Hyung and people that could help unravel the questions so that eventually the questions diminished in number and you mm-hmm. felt like that you were slowly stitching together closure. Yes. And in the meantime, making amazing friendships.
So among all the guests here today, who has found your birth parent? So all of you are still in the search for your birth parent. So do you think that your birth parent is one of the stronger connections for you between you and Vietnam, or are there any other connections that drove you to come back? Since you're all here, you're all back to the country. What made you come back?
For me, it was the reunion as well. The connection was there with the adoptees as well, rather than just looking and searching for relatives. That is also in the back of my mind as well, but the connection was already there with the adoptees, and it's a family within itself.
Mi Hyung, what else are you doing? Or what kind of systems are you putting in place to kind of make the search a little bit easier?
The next step, really, we need a system within Vietnam mm-hmm. to have a database of birth mothers in Vietnam. We probably only have the next 5 to 10 years to do something. After that, it becomes too late because some mothers have already died. And my mother now is 66. Mm-hmm. And the mothers are getting older, and their memories are getting less too as they get older. But more so, many are dying. So if something isn't put in place very soon, there's going to be less and less chance mm-hmm. of adoptees being able to find birth families. Yeah. Now back to your question before about how do they keep going. Mm-hmm. Last month I was helping another adoptee with her search, and she met my mother. Mm-hmm. And Sophie at this point had said to my mother, I've been searching and searching and I can't do any more. I'm giving up hope. And so my mother said to Sophie, on behalf of a birth mother, she was speaking to Sophie, and she said to Sophie, don't give up hope. Sophie has the ability to search. The birth mother will still be hoping. And she was speaking on behalf of a birth mother from her heart. And she said, you have to think of the birth mother who doesn't have the same abilities as what the adoptees have to do their search.
Yes.
So for that reason, for those that truly want to search, can't give up hope.
Hello, going on?
This is Sophie.
Hello, going on?
Sophie.
Pleased to meet you. Yes.
You don't know Mum live hả?
I just know I was born in Saigon, but I'm very happy to meet you. I meet one mum.
Now you know what is Mum.
Yeah.
Mẹ nghĩ đây là mẹ có hai đứa con gái, con là chị, Mỹ Hương là em.
I hope you understand that as adoptees we really do understand that
I know for you.
I hope you understand it's not your fault and all the mothers and fathers' faults, and we understand that it was the war and that you did your best. And we hope that we've done something good in our lives so that our mothers would feel proud of us. And I just want you to understand, not to feel guilty anymore, because there isn't any point, because it wasn't our fault. The toughest part of today was I've never had the opportunity to ask a Vietnamese mother how they actually felt and how it felt like to be in a war and that sort of trauma. And I think that was the most difficult part.
Nhưng mà có can đảm để mà tự giận.
And to say, I think in some ways, this might sound strange, but I'm sorry too. I'm sorry for the whole situation, you know, that was the really hard part.
So how has your life changed after you found your own birth mother?
My life in many ways has come full circle. I was 5 when I left. I'm now working within an orphanage. I adopted my first son when he was 5 years old. I now have my second son as well, also adopted from the same orphanage. And my work at the orphanage, I know how these children feel. Small children, the older children. I know their heart. They need love. And as carers for them, we can provide that. And try to provide the very best for them that we can. So that's my job now. And that's why I remain in Vietnam. I believe if I hadn't found my birth family, I'd still be working with poor children in Africa. So it just makes sense to me that I'm now doing it within the country that I was born in.
The Center for Social Protection of Long Hai Children has been the heart and passion of Mi Hương and her team since the very beginning. Established in 2009 as the third branch of Untitled Orphanage Center, this has become home and class for 136 disadvantaged children in a local community. Among them, 16 are mentally handicapped. Here, they are provided with care, insurance, food, education, and skill training every day.
When I think of the children from the very early days, then we had 60 children when we opened. They were all very dirty, very undisciplined, had never been to school. And today when I see them, I'm so proud of them. They have so much respect, they study very hard, and they're really beautiful children. So I've seen some of them grow in that time, and when I see them, my heart is just so happy and so proud of their achievements.
Besides the responsibility of maintaining the center, Mi Hương always thinks of ways to help her children have a better future. It is also part of a commitment when she decided to permanently reside in Vietnam.
Tâm huyết của chị đến đây là giống như chị đem một cái gì đó đem lại để bù đắp lại cái tuổi thơ cho tất cả các trẻ ở đây giống như chị. Thì tôi thấy Mỹ Hương rất là tốt và làm hết sức mình vì tất cả mọi trẻ.
For all the things Mỹ Hương has done for the kids, they often call her as their mother.
How does it feel now that you're kind of like the mother figure to all those children in the orphanage? How does it feel?
It's wonderful. They all call me Ma Mỹ Hương. So I tell everybody, you know, we have 2 centres, Vung Tau Centre and 1 centre in Long Hai. You know, I tell everybody I can have 300 children and 2 sons.
That's awesome.
So it's very special.
And what advice do you have for parents raising adopted children internationally?
International adoption has changed quite a lot from the time that we were adopted. Today, through the agencies that they are adopting through, adoptive parents must show how they can today foster some kind of link with the birth country. It helps them so much. It brings so much healing. I think, though, what needs to be put in place, though, is for post-adoption. When children are of age, they still need support. When they're 18, 20, 25, whatever the adoptee needs, something needs to be put in place for that. Yes. That if they want to search, that those things are put in place for them.
So thank you all guests so much for being here, and thank you Mỹ Hương for bringing them to the studio today. You know, it's been so inspiring to hear all of your stories, and you know, whether you're propelled, first of all, initially by you know, your past, or by your desire to meet your birth parents, or by your children, or by chance, you know, it's been so inspiring to hear about your search and your stories. And I hope that you all will stay strong in that search, and I hope you eventually manage to find, you know, the people that were part of your birth family.
Thank you for giving us this opportunity.
Thank you. The war has ended for more than 4 decades now, but its legacies may still live on and may still haunt some people in their daily life right now. But if you're Vietnamese, if even a little part of you is Vietnamese, we hope that that little Vietnamese part can speak in your heart, and one day it can be strong enough for that heart to turn into actions. And we hope that we'll be able to hear more stories just like the ones that we've heard today, and we want to feature them to you. So let us find you and let us feature you. Thank you very much for tuning in to Talk Vietnam. We hope to see you again next time. Take care and let your heart speak.